So if you're watching this video, you're probably considering selling final expense remotely, or maybe you already are and looking for some guidance on how to be successful. If that's you, you're watching the perfect video. Today we're doing a deep dive masterclass on final expense remote-based telesales. The purpose of this is to give you a 1,000-foot overview on how the final expense remote business works. We're going to be getting into best strategies like which carriers and what type of carriers you need to pick. We're going to talk about why the final expense business is great to consider for not just a career now, but for a long-term career. And then we're going to get into a lot of the nuances of how to run successful appointments and presentations selling remotely over the phone. So a little bit about myself. If you don't know who I am, my name is David Duford. I own the Dig Agency. We specialize in working with final expense agents who want to sell remotely from the comfort of their own home using free leads. We've got great training, great resources, and we are here to help you become top producers without all that MLM crap. So I'll definitely be pitching you a little bit later in more detail, but I do want to introduce myself there. Okay, so purpose of training today is, again, to serve as a step-by-step resource for new and aspiring final expense agents. We want to show you what the business actually looks like day to day. Again, giving you a little peek by explanation of what to expect as a remote-based final expense agent. We're not going to talk really that much about in-person traditional sales for final expense. We're going to explain why some agents succeed and why most fail. So if you don't know by now, I talk about this at length in many of my videos. Upwards of 90% of new agents fail in their first 12 months, and there's a lot of reasons why. We'll go over those reasons. But you want to be aware of those so you can avoid the pitfalls that so many fall into. And we'll also provide practical steps for licensing if you're going through the licensing process or will go through it. Choosing an agency, very, very important, and avoiding the common pitfalls, okay? So my goal is to help you decide if the final expense remote business is a good fit for you or not. And then if it is, equip you so you can start off strong. So again, I'd like to go over here a little bit about the Dig Agency. Hopefully this is readable. It doesn't look like it with the background, but that's okay. I'll read it to you. So again, really quick, we recruit part-time or full-time agents new thinking about getting an insurance or experience in insurance sales to my company, the Dig Agency. All we do is remote-based life insurance sales, predominantly final expense. We have tons of training, free high-quality leads, to remove the huge financial risk that so many agents have to take with many other agencies. We have great training from virtual ride-alongs to listen to real-life sales calls, to getting AI-supported feedback on your sales presentations that are trained off of our top producers, and just great training modules, et cetera. Everything you could ever need, obviously our scripting, and great technology to help you connect and close more of your clients than you would find going out and buying this stuff on the open market. It's an incredible technology we have. The Dig Agency has been in business since 2013. We've recruited more than 5,000 agents. We're not a multi-level marketing recruiting people to recruit people type of pyramid scheme. All I care about is you selling a crap load of insurance and learning how to do it and do it at scale consistently. And of course, we have hundreds of 5-star testimonials on Google Review, dozens upon dozens of case studies and success stories to give you a preponderance of proof that we know what we're doing and we can help you out. Also, myself, I'm an author of 4 best-selling insurance sales and marketing books. If you just put David Duford into Amazon, you can see all of them there. Many of them have very high rankings. We've done over 3,200 YouTube videos since 2014. And there's a full resource guide with case studies and proof of success if you go to my website, which is davidduford.com. Again, if you're just thinking about this business and you want to learn more about how we operate, head over there, watch the content there. You'll see what to do when you get there. Okay. So now let's start off with what I believe are the 16 reasons to sell final expense, largely on a remote basis. I think it's important to start here in our conversations because you need to be able to frame why final expense versus other products, why remote versus other opportunities, so that you can get in your mind, final expense is a great opportunity, especially as a new agent getting into this for a lot of reasons we're going to cover. So real quick here, I'm going to just make sure I didn't do something stupid like mute myself so you guys can hear me. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. Last time I did this, I think I muted myself for like 3 or 4 minutes and nobody heard me and it was not good. 117 live viewers, great. Okay, cool. So let's go back here and we'll continue to go. All right. And I'll check in with you guys here. So throw your questions in the chat. They don't have to be about joining the Dig Agency, by the way, guys. You can just throw questions in the chat about anything final expense remote-based sales related. And then once I check here in a few minutes, I'll definitely jump in and address them. Okay. So number one reason I love to sell final expense, and I think you should too, is that is a one-call close sales cycle. So if you're new to sales, the term sales cycle refers to how long it actually takes to make a sale. So for example, you can sell something like, think about selling your house. The sales cycle to selling a house is many months long, sometimes longer if you're unlucky, right? So you have to get the house prepped for sale. You have to then list it for sale after signing all the agreements with the realtor. Then you have to put it out there in the market, promote it, hope that somebody comes by and is interested. Then there's an offer made, negotiation. You settle on the final price, close out, go through inspection, and then transact, right? That can take a very long time, even though real estate is a very lucrative business model that pays very well if you sell higher end homes. It can take a long time to make a sale. And if you need money yesterday, that's a problem, right? I guess that's my point I'm trying to get to. So the benefit of final expense, especially compared to even other products, is that you can sell it on the first presentation. You can literally pick up your phone or your dialer, talk to the person on the other end the first time they've ever met you, and then 15 minutes later have them agreeing to buy from you. And then 20 minutes from there, have it closed, transacted, and done, and you now move on to the next call. So with this faster sales cycle, like immediately, you get paid faster. Your commissions come in faster than, say, in the real estate example, many, many months. Or even selling something like fully underwritten products, or possibly something like Medicare. That can take some time before the transaction actually pays you. So with final expense, you get paid faster, okay? And that is really important if you are looking for, in the insurance space, a product to sell that has a quick turnaround and a quick pay cycle, because not all of them do. If you're doing any underwriting or say like anything that like an annuity, it's lucrative but takes time. Number two, it's a simple product. Okay, this is probably one of the most important reasons to sell final expense. Here's how you sell final expense in a nutshell. Mildred, that's what we call our clients, by the way. They're old, so Mildred is our terminology. You're going to die, right? Yeah. You're going to be buried or cremated, right? Well, I think so. And it's going to cost you a lot of money. Yeah. Do you have that money laying around? No. I'm on a fixed income. What do you think? Well, here's the solution. Life insurance, right? That's kind of how the conversation, it's a little more technical than that, but that's essentially how it goes. In other words, when you're talking to somebody in their 60s or older, they know all about dying. They've had their spouse die. They've had friends die. They've certainly had their parents die in most cases by this point. They lived through death, and not just living through dying, but living through the cost of dying. So they're very aware it's very expensive to come out of pocket to pay for final expenses. So this lends itself to be a simple product to sell. When you compare this to something like, say, not that this is not hard to, it's not necessarily that much harder to sell, but when you're talking to a market that's younger, that hasn't had life experience, that maybe necessarily hasn't lost a loved one, they may not be as easily convinced that they need to come up with money to pay for something they don't get benefit to until they croak, right? So selling to a younger audience, sometimes that's an objection you have to deal with. Whereas with final expense, they kind of know the jam. They know what to expect. They're going to die, and they got to protect themselves, and they got to take care and have peace of mind to protect their loved ones, like their kids, from paying it, because they're usually broke. And they can't come up with the money. So I like that, because you getting into this business as a new agent, there's a lot to learn of any kind of product. The final expense is simple compared to, say, something like Medicare, where you got to understand all the terminology, all the products, all the different parts of Medicare, all the different plans available, or ACA, etc., or annuities. There is a complexity level that, because it's simplified, allows for easier digestion and understanding of the product, so that you can get some traction and start making some sales faster than having to sit down and learn it for a longer period of time. Does that make sense? So that's number two reason I like it. So reasons number 3 and 4, first of all, it's remote friendly. I love final expense because you can actually sell this stuff without ever leaving your home. Not to say that selling it in person is bad, but there are some issues with selling in person. I'll be frank with you. And if you can deal with this, it's not necessarily a bad opportunity. It's just the reality of it. I mean, there are some homes where you can smell piss. The couches you sit on are like wet and squishy. You're walking over cockroaches, poop. You're in like really rough neighborhoods where you feel uncomfortable and unsafe. And there's all sorts of things. People are crazy these days. I don't know if you've noticed. They're nuts, man. And there's a risk element, not to mention the drive time. You may have to travel an hour away to work leads, and then time in between burning your gas, beating up your car, trying to get and see people in person. It works. I mean, I did it. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it comes with a lot of different issues with it. All business models do. Remote-based sales has its own set of issues, for sure. But I want to be clear on is that a lot of the interest in this business has come about because when COVID shut everything down and we couldn't go out to see people face-to-face, the model of business really shifted to remote-based because the clientele did. They couldn't go anywhere either. And so they got comfortable a little bit more than they had previously with doing business, transacting over the phone. So where we see things now is that most of the business now is remote friendly. And you can literally do this from the comfort of your home. As soon as you're done with your day, you can have dinner with your kids and your spouse or do whatever you want. You can work in the morning, take some time off mid-afternoon, come back in the evening. You can do this while traveling. I had an agent last year who was in Switzerland and selling over the phone. I don't know why you would be in such a beautiful place thinking about selling insurance, but you can, and he did. So if you're looking for a remote-based type of strategy, Final Expense absolutely can do it. And people are more comfortable than ever buying remotely over the phone. They'll tell you they don't like dealing with telemarketers, but everybody hates salespeople until they find somebody. They hate people. What is the old saying? They hate to be sold, but they love to buy. So there's a paradox, and people will do it if you can give them a good pitch and help them solve the problems. There's no door knocking, so that kind of coincides with the remote-based opportunity. You don't have to roll up on people and knock on a stranger's door and worry about who's going to pop out on the other side. Again, this is rare, but it happens. I've been bit by 3 dogs. I've had a couple of people have guns at their side ready to, do business if they need to. The kind of business we don't want. I've been in really dangerous places. I've had my life threatened. Still closed them, though. I should tell that story sometime. So, and that was 10 years ago. The state of some people is a little off the deep end nowadays. And you just don't have to deal with the worst you're going to hear over the phone is somebody screaming and cursing at you and saying just horrible things, but they can't reach into the phone and like choke you or harm you physically. Maybe you mentally, but that you can recover from a lot better than a mortal wound. So again, that's why I like selling Final Expense. You don't have to deal with this stuff, the in-person stuff. If you're just completely turned off by all of this, you can do it from the comfort of your home. It's great. Other reasons to sell Final Expense, it's a growing senior market. So right now, baby boomers, I think by 2030, all of them will be 65 and older. So either 2030 and 2035. And the reason that's important is because there is a sense of an age-based mind shift that occurs that causes people to buy Final Expense. In other words, if you're 40, you usually don't buy a burial insurance plan. You're too busy living life, right? But by the time you're at retirement age, around 65, give or take, you start thinking about dying. This makes sense, right? And so with more and more people, here's my point, aging into this category of life where now 10 to 12,000 baby boomers are hitting 65 daily for the next year, next 5-10 years, but beyond that, it's going to be pretty consistent. This is a huge market. And if you're selling anything, and you're going to definitely be selling Final Expense, you got to convince people to buy because they'll procrastinate if you don't. You want a market where there's a lot of prospects. I think I read a statistic in 2024 or 23, over 1 million Final Expense plans were sold. So people are buying this stuff at a rate unprecedented with the past. Why does that matter? Because more prospects means more opportunities for you to make money. Guaranteed income prospects. This is really important. So, we've got all these economic concerns. Is the housing market going to collapse? Are we going to see with the tariffs, is that going to affect people's income? and if you're watching this in the future, we know there's going to be ups and downs in the market, and that's going to impact people's ability to buy and what they choose, and this is an important point, to spend their money on. The senior market, largely, that we sell to are retired, receiving Social Security or disability. They receive a guaranteed, and here's the point, guaranteed income every single month that they can assuredly believe in will be there to pay their bills. So this means selling to this market, you have less of the ups for sure. You don't get the huge surges in opportunity that come with the short-term market, but you see less of the downswings because of an economic calamity. I've been doing this since 2011, folks. Do you remember, for those of you who are like 30 or older, you remember what was happening in the early 2010s? We had the Great Recession. People were scared to spend their money. They had money, but they were afraid to spend it on discretionary items. That's part of the reason I got out of personal training, because people could go home and watch Tybo or do P90X or whatever was popular back then come in and do personal training. So they could get fit without spending as much money. All the while the Great Recession happened, while the Trump administration started, while COVID started, huge upswings in all sorts from an economic standpoint. Final expense has steadily grown and has been very consistent in the ability to extract sales and an income from. Why is this important? Because entering any business model, you need to think not just what can I make today, what can I make in the future, right? It's like AI, it's disrupting a tremendous amount of businesses. One of the great things about selling insurance is that you need a license to sell it. You need a human being passing a licensing exam to sell it. And I think that's going to provide a buffer for agents who get involved in this business, because there's, by design, an impediment to doing business, okay? And so likewise, final expense, you have a guaranteed stream of income that our clients receive, and Social Security is not going away, folks. It might get restricted. The age might start a little bit later. But if anybody gets rid of Social Security in any measurable way, this country's already over, and you've got bigger concerns than what am I going to make money doing? So long story short, this is one of the big reasons I love final expense as a business model, because there is a sustainability impact for years to come, at least 20 plus years is what I would say. All right, so why final expense? Reason 7, scalable model. So again, the nice thing about final expense, it's relatively simple to find leads. What's a lead? It's somebody who raises their hand and expresses a base level of interest. It could be a 1 out of 10 interest, or just like, I just was curious. It could be a 10 out of 10. Where do I sign? Like, you'll get leads like that. They're rare, but usually it's somewhere in the middle. You need to be able to convince, warm them up, and sell them about buying. But more importantly is if you've never sold anything before, it doesn't matter how cool your product is if you don't have people to talk to about buying it, and you can consistently talk to people at a high level, you're never really going to make any real money, okay? So this is why I don't like the friends and family model that a lot of these MLMs push, is because we only have so many friends and family that will talk to us about buying. And then at some point you run out of people, and then what are you going to do? Well, you got to come up with something else. Unfortunately, these MLMs don't really have a strategy, because they know that. They're trying to mine your resources, your contacts, close them, and then move on to the next unsuspecting agent, okay? So whereas what I like to do, what we teach our agents is we provide them leads, other agents will buy leads, but either way, with final expense, there's a very predictable way to talk to people who are in market and interested in buying what you're selling. That's not the case with other products so much. Medicare, pretty simple to find people, arguably health insurance as well. More lucrative products, harder to find people in market, like annuities, et cetera. But final expense is nice for that, because again, you can dial it up right away, scale up your activity, and grow. One last analogy to that for me, at my prime, I was doing 80, 100 direct mail leads a week, getting 40 appointments out of those, and selling 10 to 15 pretty consistently every week, probably 50 or 60 policies. And whereas when I started, I was taking 10 to 15 leads a week and selling like 3 or 4 policies, okay? So there is a scalability model inherently in this, which means you can increase your income if you want to work more and take more leads. Minimal service work. So a nice thing about final expense, it's not a service-heavy type of product to sell. There are products out there that you will sell that you have to continually service. And some of us aren't built that way. Some of us are more geared towards the hunter sales approach, where you just want to go hunt, kill figuratively, and then close, make the sale, and move on to the next one. Versus the farming strategy where you find the deal, you plant the deal, and then you harvest the deal over time, right? So the final expense is the hunter type of sales strategy, whereas the other models like Medicare, ACA, health insurance, these are all farming strategies because the compensation structure is only lucrative because it's a residual-based compensation structure. Very small first year. That's another problem with those. But you can retain an income if you can retain the client. So by default, you have to service these people over and over and over again. And some people just don't like to do that. There are really good salespeople that they just want to sell and move on to the next one. I'm kind of like that. And a lot of you are too, which is why final expense is pretty neat. Reason 9, no government intervention history. This is really important, guys. There is a stable market history with very little regulatory disruption in final expense. Let me explain to you why this is so important. And again, I've been doing this for 14 years. I have at certain times in my business career offered different products and services. What I have found is, especially with health insurance-based products, it is essentially arguably a quasi or fully government type good, which means, and this is not politics here, this is just facts, depending on the goals of the administration that's in, it can have an immediate, measurable impact on your ability to earn an income or your ability to even run your business. I'll give you a couple of examples. So health insurance. It used to be that you could roll business or write business, excuse me. A lot of it ended up getting rolled without ever having talking to anybody. These were these no dial systems. They were hot for a couple of years, and then ACA regulatory body put the kibosh on that and made it harder to roll business because there was a lot of fraud that was going on. Absolutely. They've also reduced, I believe you guys can fact check me on this, the household poverty index restrictions down that would allow people to switch out of their plans any time of the year. The administration previously wanted more access for all to switch healthcare plans to get a better plan, and they buy it any time of the year if you can meet the income requirements. Well, what's happened now with the new administration is that restriction's been gone from 400% to 150%, and now you need to have firm income verification, I think within 90 days of the sale consummated. Guys, fact check me if I'm wrong there. But the point is, it's much more difficult now to make a sale outside of open enrollment at the end of the year for health insurance, which means it's harder to make an income, arguably. And same thing's happening with Medicare now. Medicare, because it's a government good, it's under scrutiny. There's a lot of fraud and abuse that goes on just in general in Medicare. There's a ton of marketing money that's paid out. And there is an attempt last year to eliminate that and to standardize commissions to a point that would have absolutely disrupted the entirety of the business model. That didn't go through. I think the lobbyists in support of these large IMOs that are just getting paid tremendous amounts of money stopped it for now. But there's a lot of focus on the Medicare business right now. There are plans that are not paying commissions that were previously. There are prescription drug plans like with WellCare that were paying a commission that stopped last year. And I see a trend over basically the remainder of this administration that Medicare is going to be targeted. To what extent it happens or not, I don't know. But and here's my point, if you sell these products that have a close tie with the objectives of the government, you will see wild swings in your business friendliness environment, and that can have a direct impact on your capability to make an income. All that is to say, life insurance in general, final expense specifically, has never experienced this kind of intervention from the government. And that's a good thing. Again, for 15 years, right about 15 years I've been doing this. I've been through the Great Recession. I've been through the Trump administration. I've been through COVID. I've been through the start of these wars. And a lot of different opinions and minds have come along the way. And never once has final expense been affected or been impacted by a regulatory change or action. And I don't see that happening. And I don't know what the future brings, but that's a good sign that you can feel comfortable and confident that there's not going to be some crazy intervention from the government out of your control that will somehow adversely affect your business. Does that make sense? There's no inventory cost. So this is just a good consideration in general if you're selling anything. So there's a lot of things that are sold that you are required to purchase ahead of time to have inventory on hand. You know, I'm trying to think like air conditioning parts, you know, or plumbing. Like you have to have the parts already in your van before you can go fix the thing. You know, it's usually just not you screwing something back in. You got to have parts on hand, and a lot of different parts because there's a lot of things that go wrong, right? With final expense, the inventory is created at the time of sale. So you don't need to buy anything. The exception would be if you're buying leads. That you could argue is like marketing inventory. But you don't need to buy anything like a policy or something ahead of time before you actually sell it. So that means there's less of your money, your capital invested into the business than what you would find with other business models. So you don't need as much money to get started, is what I'm saying. Number 10, predictable sales process. So final expense is boring. It really is. You open the same way. You deal with objections the same way. You fact find and collect information on the client the same way. And then you close and complete the application the same way. You're essentially in a sales assembly line. Think about an assembly line. You're just doing the same it's the same thing, but obviously it's a performance-based assembly line. So if you don't mind boring, and I say it because like if you're making good money, who cares if it's boring, right? But it's consistent. It's repeatable. It's not something you have to go out and figure out every single day. Now you do have to like decipher your own calls. Like, okay, why am I not making sales? Why am I bumbling this? So there's opportunities for feedback loops. That's why our trainers listen into your sales calls, tell you what to say. If you get stuck, you have the ability to review your sales call. We give you a feedback on your sales presentation every single time where you will see you know, what you did right. We give you a grade, a benchmark of performance on each aspect of the script. So you have full clarity on what you did right, what you can improve. So you got to have all that stuff in place to make sure you're consistent and it's a repeatable system. But that's what's nice about final expense. There just isn't a lot of deviation from a very standard approach to doing it. Quick pay cycle. Advanced commissions mean cash flow in a few days, not weeks. So if you're an independent agent, many carriers pay within a couple of days, sometimes next week, sometimes later than that. With us at the Dig Agency, we pay weekly for business that deposits the prior week. So fast pay cycle, very important. Additionally, I'm now number 13, recession-resistant product coverage always needed. Death funerals are not optional. So like, you know, my dad used to run a chemical business. He sold off the Ecolab in 2006. And he said, Dave, you know, the reason I'm in the chemical business is because we provide chemicals to sanitize the equipment that basically slaughters chickens and some other animals too. And Americans like eating. They got to eat. Yeah, everybody's got to eat, right? So, and there's health standards that require, obviously, the manufacturing of food to follow certain health guidelines, right? So he was in a business to where there was less ups and downs as it related to the state of the economy. You had to provide this service to these people, these companies, so they could even operate. So likewise, this is why I like final expense. It's not at the crux or the effect of what happens in the business. Things go great, it's going to stay steady. Things go terrible, which is the real problem that you got to be concerned about, it stays pretty steady. Again, through the Great Recession, multiple administration changes from different sides of the aisle, and COVID, final expense has only grown. And you can even argue with COVID, people were really concerned about life insurance because people were dying. Wide carrier access. So the nice thing is if you work with a company like ours that has multiple options, you don't have to push a product. This is a big problem with choosing the wrong agencies. If you come in and pick one product and one product only, you may have otherwise made a sale if your company accepted it. But with final expense, the way most companies operate is they have a slew of options, and the goal is just to pick the option that's best suited for the client. That gets a better chance of a better price and better coverage options than if they were just pushed product. So you can feel more confident as an agent saying, hey, I'm working for the best welfare of the client by offering the best deal that we have based off of multiple options. That's always a good thing. Additionally, simple underwriting. So with final expense, with any life insurance product, you have to go through what's called underwriting. You have to answer a series of questions. And with more elaborate products, you may also have to do an examination. They may have to do what's called an attending physician statement and pull data about you. And all of this can take weeks to months. With final expense is done in what's called simplified issue whole life, or simplified issue. That just means the companies, to ascertain if you're approved or not, pull information from your medical information bureau. Okay. So that is a repository of all of our information. I know it's like Big Brother stuff. It's in Braintree, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. It's tagged by Social Security number, and it shows all of the claims that are associated with our Social Security number. So they reference that database by the questions they ask, and they can, here's the important point, get a decision instantly in most cases. Sometimes it gets referred to underwriting. Additional questions have to be asked or looked a little bit closer. But the point is, with simple underwriting, you get a decision. That means you get a sale. You don't have to wait weeks or months like with these other life insurance products. Again, that's like that one-call sales cycle. This ties right into it. You get a quick decision, which means it gets quickly approved in most cases, which means you get quickly paid relative to other products. Flexibility and work-life balance. This is how we operate. This is how most other agencies operate as well. It is largely a 1099 profession. There's some people that do wage plus bonus, but largely it's 1099. So you work when you want. You need to take time off in the middle of the afternoon, walk away from work. It's great. It's not a business where you have to constantly babysit your clients. You do have to make callbacks. Sometimes people don't make payments. You got to call them to get the payment set back up, ask them why. Stuff happens, right? It's business. But it's not something where you're just constantly babysitting everybody after hours. You're making your sales when it's appropriate for your schedule, and then you're done. Whether you're part-time, like the gentleman in the chat said, and you need to work in the evenings, or you got things going on in the afternoon, or you just want to take a vacation, or you want to work weekends to coincide with your full-time schedule, you can absolutely do that with final expense. How the money works. Show me the money. So again, a really cursory overview of how the commissions work. So in final expense, really this is true of life insurance too. Commissions are determined by the premium that's based on an annual basis times the commission percentage, okay? In other words, if Mildred pays $100 a month for 12 months, that's $1,200. That's the annual premium. Does that make sense? We on the same page? Great. To determine your earnings for first year commissions, you then multiply it by your commission rate. So if your commission rate is 100%, you'd multiply 1,200 times 100%, and your first year commission is $1,200. Make sense? Good. And we'll get into what's a good commission rate in a little bit. But for the sake of understanding the basics, I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Second of all, you will be advanced that amount, a percentage of that amount up front. So you're not getting, in this example, $1,200 up front. The company advances you, which is a fancy word for a loan, more on that in a minute, typically 6 months or 9 months of the 12 months of commission. In other words, 50 to 75%, because 6 is half of 12 and 9 is 3/4 or 75% of 12. Does that make sense? So in most cases, it's 9 months. So if you sold an American Amicable policy and your commission's 100% and the premium is $1,200 in annual premium, class, how much are you ending up with? Toss it in the chat. What's your upfront commission at 100% times 75% times 1,200? I can't see your chat. I'm just going to assume you answered it right because the math's not too hard. It's $900. So your upfront cash flowing $900. But what about the back end? What about that money I didn't get, that $300 of the $1,200? You receive that if the policy's on the books in months 10, 11, and 12. So in month 10, you get 100. Month 11, you get 100. And month 12, you get 100 for a total of $1,200 up front. Or I'm sorry, $1,200 in commissions for the first year. You got it? What about the back end renewal money? If there's renewals, then it pays monthly at that very small rate. Usually renewals on vested contracts where your commission is high are usually in the 3 to 5% range, give or take. So in other words, 5% of $1,200 is $60. You're going to get paid $5 a month in renewals, roughly, okay, in that example. But here's the thing. Because I like to keep it real, this is an educational course. You need to know this stuff. You need to know about chargebacks. Do you guys know what a chargeback is? If you don't, you're gonna. A chargeback is when Mildred pays on the policy. Sometimes they don't pay at all, and then a chargeback the entire amount, but usually pays for a period of time. and then misses a payment and does not decide to catch the payments up, and the policy lapses. When that happens, typically depending on the company, you owe back prorated what commission or what premiums weren't collected in commission. So let's take this mathematically a little bit more clear. Mildred you get paid a $900 advance on Mildred's $1,200 premium. It's an advance of 75%. You with me? Mildred pays 3 months and then lapses. How much do you owe back if it's prorated? Well, you owe back $600 of the $900 because Mildred paid 3 payments in. That covered 3 months of the actual advance that was paid. So now you owe back $600. You with me? But Dave, why don't I get to keep that money? Well, that's the thing. Your policy is collateral, okay? It's like the down payment on the thing you're buying. In this case, you're saying you're selling. You're getting advanced money. That's a loan. Historically, before there was this advance system, you would get paid whatever your percentage rate is based off of the monthly premium that comes in. The problem with that is it's so low, it's hard to support buying leads or even support yourself. You could do business that way, and there's less advance risk to pay back, but you also lose out on a lot of cash flow. Does that make sense? So with chargebacks, you're going to pay back some portion of it, and everybody gets chargebacks, okay? The function of how much chargebacks you get is a function of what you sell, meaning a diversity of products that you can get the best combination of price and coverage for, in combination with how you sell. If you pressure Mildred to buying when she can't afford it, you're going to get charged back, okay? So I hit that here. If a client lapses before premiums cover the advance, agent owes back the balance, which is prorated, which means you don't usually owe back the whole thing. Some carriers do. So if you pay in like 2 months, you might owe back all 9 months. We try to avoid writing those carriers as much as possible because I think you should keep what you convince the client to pay as far as what earned commission you keep. Overselling leads to higher lapse risk and debt. And ethical selling, proper placement, and persistency management reduced exposure. Let's talk about a day in the life of a telesales agent. Maybe you're wondering, like, what is it actually like selling this stuff? When we say telesales agent, remote agent, what do you do? What are you doing? Let's briefly go over that because it's not very complicated. So first, you start early. I recommend reviewing pending business. So this is business maybe you submitted to underwriting, you're waiting on the results for. Maybe you have to do some follow-up work. This is a very small minority of what you have to do. The bigger issue is making sure you quickly follow up on any lapse reports that you get. Any notifications that somebody has missed a payment, call them on the phone and figure out why. A quick story here. When I first started, I was appalled that people would buy a policy from me and then not pay. And I got to the point in a sense of arrogance and pride that if these mofos were just not going to make the premium payment, then I'm never going to call them again. They're obviously deadbeats, right? So that's what I thought, stupidly. I'll explain why in a minute. I got to Christmas time, and I was kind of low on leads at the time. It's 2011, so I was like, well, let's just go back and see some of these people. And it turns out of like the 15 people I saw, 7 of them re-upped with me. And why did they do that? They were careless. Now, there's some things we'll talk about billing to help with this, very important, but they just forgot the bill was coming out. They're old. They're seniors. And I don't mean to be derogatory about this. I'm just telling the truth. They just forgot about it. But because in my arrogance, I didn't even attempt to try to call them back, they went without coverage. I even had one lady, I remember where it was, what part of town it was. It's like yesterday. She's like 81. And I knocked on her door. I was like, hey, you took this plan out with me. It was a pretty big deal, but you didn't pay. What happened? She's like, oh, I didn't know that. I just thought you guys didn't take me. I don't want to do it now. And I was like, dang, man, if I had just followed up with this lady, she said, hey, it missed. Oh, I might have had a serious chance to keep it. So what's the moral of the story? You got to call your clients back. Half the time, they don't pay because of some stupid reason they're not even aware of. And it's easy to get them back up. You either rewrite them with another policy or then call into the company and reschedule the payment to come out now or at a later period. Just depends on the circumstances. But don't just let them go. Don't be like me. So you start your day doing that. It's really important you get, a bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush. That one's in the hand. Save it. and make sure the premium gets caught back up. Now, the rest of your day, it's really simple. You're sitting down, you're on the phone, you're on your dialer, and you're working a batch of leads. You're in grind set mode, okay? You are just grinding through, trying to find the one prospect out of many of them where the timing is perfect and they're receptive to what it is that you're hearing. So what does that mean? That means you're probably doing 150 to 200 plus dials a day. Could be more than that. If you're like with us running in the background, you won't know how many you're dialing. It'll be a function of time on task, which my recommendation is do as much as you can. At least try to do 8 hours if you're full-time a day. Part-time, I would say 3 to 4 hours a day, okay? And then the goal I have for my agents is at least one sale out of every 4 full presentations, okay? So full presentations is 15 to 20 minutes at the high end. You're going to get people who shut you down in the beginning. There's some tactics to overcome those objections for sure. But the goal is to keep people on the phone, give them a full presentation. 1 out of 4, sell them. Do we have agents do better than that? Yeah. Do we have agents who do worse? Yeah. But that's, again, kind of the benchmark and goal of where you should be. Again, you have to develop the mindset of calling and closing. You're closing. As soon as they say hello, you're going to close that person. You can never accept, from a mindset standpoint, that there is a callback you could do. Now, in reality, do you do callbacks and close? Sure. But it's like 1 out of 50 that will actually result in a close. Some of the times they do. But the real problem is when you develop a bias and you start thinking like, hey, this one did close. They did call back. It does work. I can call back. You'll start letting yourself off the hook psychologically to rebuttal their BS objections at the time in the original first call. And you'll be less effective and you just won't write as much. So you got to come in and close. Close them today. There's not a second call. You either close them today or they're dead to you. And that's how you have to think, okay? Bottom line, success is high activity, meaning time on the phone, working through a lot of leads, and consistently executing the script. Okay, this isn't a script training video, guys. Again, this is high level stuff, but if you want to see the script training, if you go into my YouTube channel and you put in like final expense script, David DeFord, I've got several videos. One I did, I think, a couple of months ago. It's an hour and a half long. It's really good. It goes into great detail about how the script works and where you can get it for free, even if you don't join the Dig Agency. But it's pretty simple. I didn't say it was easy. It's a simple business. But like my old friend in the business, John Duggar, said, it ain't easy. Okay? And so, yeah, that's how a day in the life of Telesales. There are a couple other things. I don't know if they're on a slide here. Let me see if they're going to show up here. We'll get to these reasons for failure. But I will say, back to the reasons that, let me go back up to the last one. The reasons that, the other issues that happen with telesales agents, there is something about working at home that changes your psychology of the nature of work. To some degree, going to a job, even being out of the house, but having somebody look over your back, we may not like it, but it's easier to hit the numbers we want when we're being held accountable visually. That doesn't happen when you're at home. Nobody knows what you're really doing. You may have a manager, you may have somebody that you have to report your time to, but the temptation to do other things than to talk to another person about buying insurance may be very tempting to go instead look at YouTube or, do chores. Additionally, your spouse or your kids may not respect the fact that you're working and come up to the door and demand your attention. You have to create boundaries. You have to mentally put on your work hat and get to work, even though you're at home. That takes some work, in my experience. One pro tip that works well for many agents, Marcus, our top agent last year, he wrote $600,000 in business. He has a private office away from his home. He rents. And he just goes there 10 minutes away, sits down, and goes to work. And it delivers the work-like effect that keeps him focused. It works for him. So it's something to consider if, you find that as a struggle, okay? Okay, three main challenges that cause failure. So remember when I mentioned earlier that 90% of new agents fail in the first 12 months? Well, I wasn't just doing this for shock value. It is the standard. There's a ton of failure in this business, and you need to be absolutely concerned. Right now in the live section, there's 110, 100-ish of you in there. If there's 110 of you, 99 of you are going to fail. That's huge. You can't play that off like that doesn't apply. I've been accused of being kind of like a Debbie Downer about this stuff, but I am of the complete persuasion that you need to know the risks involved with this business and the failure rates and to plan accordingly, as opposed to just, I hope it'll turn out. You need to have an action plan to not be a statistic. But the good news is that there are ways and things to avoid, and I think we're going to talk about some of them. I'm going to mention some other ones here too that I think are important. So a couple that I think are the three main charges that cause, or main challenges, chargebacks. So this is a problem in the business if you sell one product or if you come in and you're a hardcore closer. Okay, you need to push for the sale. There's a right way to push that's in the best interest of the client. There's a wrong way to push, which is the best interest of you. We train the difference there. It's subtle, but it's very important to understand it. Chargebacks will kill you and wipe you out of the business. They cannot be prevented in its entirety, but by a careful selection of what products you sell and certainly how you sell, you can minimize those, okay? The other thing that kills agents is they just, again, they're ignorant of chargebacks. I mean, it's shocking, or they pretend it's not going to happen to them. You know, ostrich, head in the sand thing. You're going to have people who cancel on you. You're going to have to pay back some of your commissions. And the way out of a commission issue is to make sure you're consistently producing every week. So where chargebacks are the most impactful is an agent comes in, they sell a bunch of business, take some time off and spend their money, and then they realize a bunch of it lapses, and they're like, oh crap, I didn't know this was going to happen. And then they start getting psychologically damaged and having trauma, and then start to make mistakes, purchase worse leads, give themselves excuses. Whereas the real problem was they weren't putting in the consistency, and they weren't honest with themselves that chargebacks are going to happen, and they didn't plan accordingly. Okay, that's why I'm saying this. Sell the right way, but don't blow all your money either. Like, save a lot of it. And chargebacks come in waves. Sometimes you won't have some for a while. Sometimes you have a bunch. What are chargeback percentages? I would say roughly in the remote business, 1 out of 4 are going to lapse in the first year. And then guaranteed issue business, more about that eventually. Maybe 1 out of 3 are going to lapse. A little bit worse for guaranteed issue in my experience. Rejection. That is a big killer of this business. People tend to be paper tigers talking to you over the phone. The things that they say, most of them don't have the balls to say it to you in person. This is the truth. Okay? And on top of that, they'll disrespect you. They don't know who you are, so it's safer to be a jerk. They'll hang up on you, curse, say the nastiest things. Luckily, that's the worst it can be. But we're all human beings. I'm like you. I mean, I have emotions. You know, I'm sensitive. And, you know, getting slapped around after a while can do some trauma. So your ability to not take this personally and to reflect on the things you can and cannot control, you can't control them being an asshole, frankly. But what you can control is calling the next one, knowing that how they're going to react has no bearing to what happened previously, except how you handle it yourself. And just grin and bear it. To be able to compartmentalize what you cannot control outside of what you can control, which is your activity. It's easier said than done. But the rejection side of things, it's going to happen. The paradox of this business is that the best agents who make the most sales have way more rejection experience than the worst agents that quit the business because they just couldn't handle it. Okay. So get used to it. It happens. Don't take it personally. How can they reject you? They don't know who you are. They're rejecting your offer, not you. Boredom and complacency. This is kind of funny. This is a boring, remember I said final expense is boring? It is. You rinse and repeat every single day. And a lot of people who start to have success, they start to, I get this sense, as I start to look at other opportunities that have sex appeal. I mean, crypto, real estate, side hustles. You know, there's like a level of, dopamine rush that comes from doing some of these things, right? And a lot of the times that distraction reduces performance selling. And then they end up flopping out because they've deviated from their main work. I'm not saying you can't do other things. I'm saying be very careful, especially in the beginning, the first year or two, trying to do other things or be everybody to everything to everybody. When distraction markedly reduces performance outcomes for the vast majority of humanity. Okay, don't wander, focus, and dial in. Give yourself a couple of years. If you're having success, especially, stay away from the other things. You find this problem in life is that as you start to have success, it's you have to start saying no to things. In the beginning, I think as a young man, if you're out there in your 20s, say yes to an opportunity that looks good to you. Get some experience. Go all in. You have a very little to lose. But as you progress through life, and certainly as you progress in success, there are going to be all sorts of distractions that can destroy your career. It can destroy your income earning opportunity, professionally and personally. You got to say no to these things. Okay. So, and that's kind of the dual-edged sword of being an entrepreneurial type of personality, which most of you are who are attracted to this. We all want to say yes. I say yes to things. I've had to say no to things that I think are really good opportunities. But knowing like I got a good thing going over here, I got to focus my effort here. Does that make sense? It's very, very important. Other challenges, other things that cause failure. And I may mention this, so I don't want to blow it too early. So I'll briefly mention it, and then if you guys want me to cycle back and talk about it, joining the wrong agency, huge. Lots of MLM Kool-Aid drinking in this business. Probably we'll talk about it later. Crappy leads. You got people out there saying all leads are the same. They're not. There is a definite difference between leads. Working bad leads in an otherwise good business is a great way to fail. And then what else? Kind of back to the agency thing. Just a misalignment of goals. Again, I think we're going to talk more about that momentarily. All right, some mindset stuff. So what are some mindset items that you need to be successful in final expense telesales? First of all, you got to change your mindset up about making money. The way that you make money is through inputs. So we think about inputs being what you put into the business to get results on the output. Inputs and outputs, right? So what are the inputs? It's the time on task. It's calls, dials, presentations. And that input drives your output, your sales, your money in your pocket. So what's my point? To get the outputs, you first need what? Inputs. So what you need to be concerned with is less of the outputs and more of what? The shit you're supposed to be doing. In other words, calling people, following the script, and doing that at scale, meaning not a couple of hours a day, but for hours and hours a day. Again, pro tip. This is not a secret, but it absolutely is the only reason I'm successful, because I've never been a great agent. I've never been a bad agent. I'm like a 7.5 out of 10 agent is how I grade myself. The only reason I'm here, and I've been through ups and downs, I failed out of the business, came back. The only reason I'm here is because I don't quit. And I work longer and harder than 95% of everybody else. That's the only reason. So please take my advice. If you want to get ahead in this business, there is no magic sauce. There's no secret sauce. There's some things you can say that are helpful. There's a lot of other good scripts that are other than ours. There definitely is a difference in lead quality, but let's say you got all that. You got good leads, got great training, good script. Work more. Just work more. You don't have to do it forever, but the more work you put in, the more likely you're going to make money, because the metrics make out generally, if you sell 1 out of 4 hours, one policy every 4 hours, figure out how to do 60 hours if you want to make a lot of money selling 12 policies, okay? Is it work? Yeah. Is it hard? Yeah. But that's the path. Most of y'all won't do it though. But that's why if the ones who do it are going to have a lot more success, because they do what the other guys won't do. Okay. Skill game. You have to have the skills to pay the bills. All right. If you want to get good at telesales, you have to develop a really good tone. You have to develop a really good objection rebuttal scheme, especially on the front end of the calls where they give you a bunch of mouth about, oh, I didn't do this, and I already got life insurance, or I'm not blah, 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 click. Again, watch my $1 million final expense telesales script video that we recently did. Put it into the search. You'll see the script from A to Z, what to say. You need to practice. You need to repeat it over and over and over again until it is the thing that you do and know by heart. Okay? You got to master this stuff. Long-term view. Success is measured not just daily. In the beginning, you're going to feel that way, but you got to move your mind to what happens monthly, quarterly, and quarterly, not call by call. Again, you're going to have great days and you're going to have terrible days. Some weeks, the clients throw their checkbooks at you, and the other weeks, they hate your guts. But the truth is, there's an undulation, there's a wave, and the further back in time you move from appointment to appointment or presentation to presentation to days to weeks to months, you'll see a level of consistency smooth out. And if you can psychologically take yourself out of the day-to-day, second-to-second activity, which is by nature we're all attuned to, and force yourself to think longer term, you're going to be much more grounded, you're going to be much more consistent, and what you'll find is the numbers kind of stay consistent if you put the inputs in consistently. Coachability. Follow proven systems. Arrogance kills careers. Don't be arrogant. Take constructive criticism. It's hard, I know. If you're told you suck in so many words, fix it. The people who survive take constructive criticism and apply it immediately. Okay? If you're full of excuses and you're a victim, just don't even do this business. You will fail. Okay? And that's just true for anything in life, really, but certainly for any sales endeavors, is just follow systems, be coachable, and stay committed to fixing problems you're having. Don't make excuses. Work ethic. It's not a technical business. It's about hours, resilience, and persistence. Again, kind of tying into what I said earlier. And now the questions about getting licensed, we'll go through this really quick. It's really simple. Just do a Google search or go to ChatGPT and put in how to get your life insurance license in Tennessee, whatever your state is. You'll get a step-by-step readout about exactly what you need to do. You have to do pre-licensing. ExamFX is probably the industry standard. It's very good. Excel is good too. You can just Google search both of those to get the links. Take the practice exams as you study through each of the sections. Get a 70% or greater every single time you take the practice exams and the full test. And it's when you can do that consistently, probably closer to 80%, because you usually need a 70% to pass your life and health insurance exam. Then schedule the state examination with a proctor. Usually it's Pearson, VUE, or Kaplan. If you just say, take my life insurance license in your city state, you'll get an option of what's available to do it. And then once you pass, you then usually have to do a background check with the state. Usually requires fingerprints, some basic background check to make sure everything's legit. You pay the government the money they want. They always want your money, of course. And usually the total price out of pocket is going to be $200 to $400. And you're probably looking at about a week to 3 weeks to get your license. You may be in the system sooner than that. All in all, this whole cycle, it can take months. It can take a matter of weeks. I think I passed my license in like 10 days because I was like, okay, I want to sell final expense. Let me just bang it out and get it done. Okay. So choosing the right agency. Let's hit that up. How are we doing on time here? Okay, good. Again, choosing your right agency is either the biggest reason why you succeed or the biggest reason why you fail, all else equal. So number one, what are you looking for in a right agency? Look for evidence of success. Look for testimonials, case studies, and verifiable production. So this is for me, speaking of my agency as an example, I've always followed the principle of preponderance of proof. I think that you should distrust basically everything that you see until proven otherwise. And I operate that way mentally. And that's why I do these lengthy videos so you can see I know what I'm talking about. You can not only that, but you can see the case studies of the dozens of agents that have worked with us that attest without me guiding them or telling them what to say, what their experience has been like with the big agency, because most agencies don't. And it's a huge risk if they sound good when you talk to them, but there's nobody saying that they are good. See what I'm saying? So I think it's important that wherever you end up, you got to see that somebody's been successful. And not just one person, but many examples from people in all walks of life. Old, young, male, female. Sales experience, not. You should be able to have that immediately available to you to attest to the claims these agencies are making. Let me step back and say this. A lot of the agency owners, guess what, are the best salespeople. They're charismatic. They usually have come from a multi-level marketing background, and a charismatic leader mentality is how they've been raised to think, and that's how they project themselves. And you cannot allow yourself to get entrapped into their blue sky pitch about how amazing their company is. Everybody says that. But what factually makes the difference? And it's these assets of testimonials, proof that you should be looking for. Additionally, you should see if you can speak to, especially if you're not satisfied with what you're seeing, you should be able to speak privately with active producers, people that are, maybe just by email. It's hard sometimes to get active producers to talk to you and stop what they're doing. They're busy making money, providing for their own family. But it's not wrong to say, hey, I want to make sure this is a good fit for me. It's a big change. Can you give me a couple of names of agents I could email, maybe ask a few basic questions to? Don't overload them with a million questions, but say, hey, how's it going with you? How do you like the agency? Can you give me just some basic feedback? I'm trying to determine if I should go to this agency. And that will give you insight that you may not otherwise get. Transparency, again, it should be clear and very transparent on what your earning is, what the onboarding process is like, and what the expectations are up front. Communication standards, issues should be addressed promptly. So if you have problems, questions, concerns, you should be able to address those promptly. A proven lead program. Again, in remote final expense, it's not about friends and family sales. It's about having a lead system that is proven, again, through the transmutation of what others have said about that. You should be able to prove the success of the system. Again, widely tested, used, and producing results. And you should have training resources. Guys, this is a simple business, but not an easy one. You should have access to mentorship, recorded calls, AI-based training to help you review your calls, tutorials, underwriting guides, role play, live coaching. That should not be an add-on. It should be standard. Again, here's kind of a question I get asked a lot. I think it's important. I get asked a lot like, okay, how much money can I make in this business? Or how much money am I going to make? Or like, what is the average income? And it's impossible to answer because the truth is that nobody knows what you're going to make. If somebody says, and I saw it the other day and it stuff pisses me off. I saw a competing organization. They say their average income is $150,000 a year. Bullshit. It's not true. There's no way that with 150 plus agents, they're averaging $150,000 a year. It's impossible. It's a lie. Okay. And if anybody suggests that because of how the reality of sales teams work, there's an 80-20 principle to it. They're trying to scam you in some way. That's what my general advice is. So where am I going with this? What you should be concerned with is which agency is going to stack the odds in your favor to give you the best chances of success. Because we've already determined it's impossible to guarantee results. So you want an agency that has all this stuff, that provides all this stuff. So you at least have an honest chance of being successful. But there are many agents that may have some of this, but not all of this, or none of this. And all they operate on is acclaim and charisma. Is that the way you want to go? I would suggest not. So keep that in mind. That's kind of my general answer with income claims or income requests is like, you want to know there's opportunity, but you want to also know that it's the resources are there and the proof is there that the opportunity has been achieved and can possibly provide you the best chances of success. Does that make sense? Okay. A couple of things here to be concerned about. So contracting is, so how does contracts work? Really briefly here, some key contract terms. Line of authority, the agency pays you, not the carrier. It's often no ownership of the book of business. This is very important if you are buying leads. If you don't own the book of business and you're buying leads, at any time you get terminated, you'll lose those recurring commissions. But you've paid all this money for leads. I know I can name the company right now, but I won't. That this is what they do. They provide the leads, or you have to pay for the leads. But if you're terminated within 2 years, you lose all of the money you would have earned. And to me, that's like, well, I'm investing, but then I don't own it. See what I'm saying? That's the logic that doesn't make sense. Low commission levels. Okay, so anything, and this is in general, but anything that has a commission of 70% or lower, if you're buying leads, is typically unprofitable. I mean, that's why I tell agents all the time. I have agents basically every Q&A call that work with us. They're like, can I buy my own leads to supplement what you do? I'm like, no, man, that's stupid. It's a waste of your money. Like, you will not make money at the commission levels we set you on because it's not designed to support a lead pay-based model. Does that make sense? So if you're buying leads and you see 7% or less, run. It's just not financially going to work. Vesting is kind of tied in with line of authority. If you're buying leads, make sure you're vested. Okay, you want to own your book of business because you're putting up the financial risk. And releases, this is a big one. Make sure before you join an agency that you're allowed to, if it doesn't work out, to move your carriers to another agency, because you may be locked out of carriers you love and that are critical to working with another agency, but the company, the agency, will not allow you to move those carriers. So with us, if you come to work with us, you go through the process and it doesn't work out, you can email our team and say, hey, I want to release, and we'll give it to you. Barring any sort of debt, like chargeback debt, usually there's none, we'll allow you to move to another agency. So you have the freedom to run your business in the way that you want to. Very important. Captive versus independent, two things to know here. Captive typically means you have one carrier where it is simpler to run a business that way or sell because it's just one product. It's less complex, but it's going to be less competitive too. And generally speaking, one product companies have higher lapse rates because they're routinely replaced by better priced companies. And then also they have lower sales success because you're constrained within one option. Like for example, you may sit down with a client who you can replace their plan with something better. They don't like the payment they're getting, but you can't beat the price. Whereas if you had multiple options, maybe one could save the person hundreds of dollars a month or year, and they'll do business because you had that option, whereas the other way you didn't. So closing rates tend to be lower and you make less money in a captive company, in my opinion. Independent typically means more options, more carrier options. That's a little bit more complex, not too terribly bad. The trade-off is you're going to typically have a higher percentage of sales relative to a captive company, and I think therefore a higher level of income potential. So I am generally of the persuasion either of these options are fine, but independent agents typically have the best upside potential for success. Independent meaning multiple carrier options. So full-time versus part-time, yes, we recommend full-time commitment. Part-time can work. Most part-timers do fail. Most part-timers fail due to a lack of focus. So this is something that is intrinsic in part-timing. It's like you're part committed. So the key thing is to have a full-time mentality if you're part-time. So if you're going to do this, go all in, even though if you can only do it for 15 or 20 hours. Does that make sense? Don't just do it like you're a hobbyist. Like this happens sometimes with retirees. They're like, oh, I'm bored. I need something to do. I want to sell life insurance with Dave. And then they're like, no, I don't. I got to work. I'm like, well, yeah. So you have to have that mentality that you want to make the most of it. That's the big difference, okay? Okay, quickly on carrier strategy. I recommend 3 to 5 carriers to start with, or at least 3 to 5 to focus on. So you have underwriting and pricing flexibility. Always include one guaranteed issue carrier. Guaranteed issue means no questions asked. Some of these people we talk to in the final expense world have 9 toes figuratively in the grave. I mean, they're on oxygen with congestive heart failure and dialysis. You can get those people approved. So you don't want to miss up on the business. So guaranteed issue is good to have. So a couple of things that are important with your carriers that you need to have. First of all, instant decisions. Stay away from carriers that refer a large amount of business to underwriting. There's one carrier that we have. I don't really like it, but it's there if nothing else works. They refer like half of the business to underwriting. And it's like if you lead with that carrier, you're going to miss out on a ton of business. Why? Because the client may get tired of trying to get approved on the phone and just hang up. People give up. You want to lead and write carriers that give instant approvals 90% of the time. Signature flows built for telesales. So most good telesales carriers will do text to sign. Don't do DocuSign email setups. Our clients don't know how to use email. I mean, they'll get there, but then pressing the buttons, if it's more than like simple second grade level, sorry, they'll fail at it. Don't do DocuSign. In fact, we're about to roll out a verbal application process for our GI carrier because of this reason. Like, we'll sell a lot more GI because they'll just verbally sign and be done with it. It's amazingly simple. Social Security deposit billing. That means drafting the premium on the exact date the client receives their disability or Social Security check. 9 out of 10 clients are like this. If you draft after the fact, they may take their money out and forget about it and then not have it on hand to make the premium payment. Social Security deposit billing increases your persistency, the amount of people that don't lapse, okay? All of our products, I think with the exception of a handful, do Social Security deposit billing. It's kind of the standard now, so luckily it's normal. High approval rates. Again, use carriers that give a decision right away, yes or no. Hopefully yes, consistently. and then have other carriers ready to pivot. That does happen. Sometimes your client forgets about that touch of AIDS or a touch of COPD, and they end up getting declined. Competitive pricing. Make sure that you have decent pricing. I am less convinced that pricing is as important as I used to make it out, although I do think it's important to have competitive carriers, because sometimes the only way to write a person is to have competitive carriers. But it's not like the end all be all like I thought in the past. Flexible underwriting for different conditions like diabetes, COPD, cancer, cardiac issues. Make sure you have child riders or whole life options available, like Mutual of Omaha has the child whole life rider or whole life product that's really good to sell in conjunction with whatever else you're selling. Also, riders for child coverage is really good, like American Amicable has that. That helps persistency, the quality of business that sticks. Have age range capability. There are some carriers that go up to 90. And pay timing. Again, generally speaking, especially if you're buying your own leads, get carriers that pay on issue. That means you get paid a couple of days after it's approved, versus pay on first draft. That could occur weeks later if you sold them today, but the draft doesn't come out till the 15th of the month. A lot of time that passes before you get paid. Avoid carriers with clunky apps, slow decisions, or poor telesales support. They're out there. They're not all the same. Lead strategy. Oh boy, all the meat here, and we got 9 minutes left. Okay. Lead strategy. Fundamentals. Leads are the lifeblood of your business. No leads equals no business. Hopefully we've made that clear. A lead is somebody who expresses interest. It's not a guaranteed sale, okay? It's your ability to convince them that makes all the difference. You are the variable that matters the most. Outbound is when you call the leads. I prefer that strategy because you can control the amount of volume that you do. It tends to be that the most successful agents that write the most business do outbound almost exclusively. And then inbound is where they call you. It's higher intent, meaning they close at a higher rate because they're bothering to call you because they have enough interest to make the call. But it tends to be very expensive to generate those leads and very unpredictable. And there are some compliance issues with those we'll get into in a minute. Okay, so what about free versus paid? Real quick, this is why we do free leads at the Dig Agency. There's an emotional financial risk of spending thousands of dollars and not getting anything from it, and the impact of spending money and not seeing sales as it relates to your performance. Free leads eliminates that. I believe it improves retention and success rate. And it's really a good way to just start the business, to put your toe in the water without so much financial risk. There's zero out-of-pocket expenses equals better focus on selling. So the less you have to worry about in investing and not getting back, I just think it allows you to focus better on what matters, which is you getting better at selling. Paid leads does provide for sure potential for higher splits and commissions if self-funded. Because think about it, you're paying your own leads. You should have a higher commission because of that. And the potential is if you're super, super good, you probably are going to make more than the person on the free lead program. Not always, but the potential should be there, all else equal. Sometimes it's not all else equal, but you get the point I'm saying. Gives you control if you know how to market. That's a big thing. But the high failure rate, because of the reasons mentioned why I think free leads is better in some senses. Most agents, in my experience, are very emotional about their money. And I understand it's an emotional thing to lose money on a thing that isn't working. But there is ups and downs in this business, and to control yourself mentally is critical. And to some extent, getting rid of that risk and just letting somebody else carry it is good, especially in the beginning. Lead types working. We like internet and social media leads, especially Facebook. TikTok can work well. Fresh opt-ins off of ads can do well. TV is also a viable ad, expensive but viable. But let's talk about what's not working. Overseas telemarketing. Quick story. I had an agent, unbeknownst to me, that bought a lead that was a pre-sold lead. The call center was in Pakistan. They were calling people on the do not call list, completely illegal. They took the guy's information, transferred it to the agent, and lo and behold, guess what? This guy was a professional suer. He had, like, not sewer, S-E-W-E-R, like sue you, like take all your money in a lawsuit. And we had to settle for 5 figures for one fucking phone call. That wasn't even this agent's fault. It was some dipshit in Pakistan, okay? And we can't sue the people over there. They're not Americans. They're out of federal jurisdiction. So it was on, allegedly, us, even though we had no control over it. So where am I going with this? Don't buy these call centers. Like there was a post in one of these Facebook groups. What do you think about me getting a WhatsApp message with information on the client to go ahead and just write them up without talking to them? Like, because this call center did. I was like, are you guys serious? This is a scam. Don't do this crap, okay? Don't take the bait and the temptation for the easy stuff because you will get screwed. Bulk data leads. This is like trash leads that these MLMs sell and then upsell and make a huge killing off of. Don't call that crap. Direct mail, great for face-to-face, not for telesales. Too expensive. Doesn't work. And then look out for non-live transfer, non-TV live transfers. This is basically overseas telemarketing. Just stay away from anything like that, okay? How to work leads. We work age leads with our new agents predominantly. It's a good place to practice, get reps, get good without blowing through a bunch of fresh leads, whether it's on our dime or yours. You get to learn the script in a kind of interactive, real way with leads that do buy, not at the same extent as a fresh lead does, but this is just a way to kind of get started with training wheels. Work into fresh leads for sure. You ultimately want to be there because they're higher intent, stronger conversions. And don't forget to track your metrics, track your dials, presentations, and follow-ups. Not all leads are the same. And one of the things, especially if you're running your own marketing and buying your own leads, you need to make sure your leads are performing and producing at a good level, okay? Tools and tech really quick here. You got to have a CRM. Of course, I recommend my own, finalexpensecrm.com. Very good if you're looking for final expense telesales. That's what we use in our free lead agency. But if you do your own thing and you want to buy ours, finalexpensecrm.com. Quoter, Insurance Toolkits or Best Plan Pro. Most people use Insurance Toolkits. It's a really good quoter. Oh my gosh, got 3 minutes left. $35 a month. Digdialer.com. I wish I could tell you more about it. It's amazing. If you don't work with us, buy this. We give it to you for free if you join. And then hardware, big thing here, just have a couple of monitors so you have more real estate and a quality headset. And wired internet. If you can get a direct line to ensure that you have good connection, it's really important. Long-term opportunities into this business, besides just keep doing what you do, you can build an agency like I did. That's a great way to scale your income higher if you know what to do. Cross-sell other products. I don't encourage it, especially in the first year or so, but you could get to the point where you cross-sell, especially something like Medicare or ACA even, health insurance. And then carrier mix. I don't know why that's there. Shouldn't be. All right, in conclusion, final expense is telesales is a simple business to understand. It is tough to master, though. Success is built on activity, discipline, and persistence. Remember, the 3 killers of this business are chargebacks, rejection, and boredom. Manage that to reduce your failure rate. Leads drive everything. Free, proven, compliant lead programs, in my opinion, give agents the best chance. Although if you buy your own leads, you can do very well if you buy the right kind of leads and you have the right mindset about investing your money. The right agency partner matters more than anything else. Look for transparency, mentorship, vested contracts if you're buying your own leads, and then proven system of training, leads, all of that jazz. And then long-term stability comes from simplicity. Stick with one product, meaning final expense as a whole, a handful of strong carriers, and have a consistent daily routine. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here on another masterclass session. I hope you enjoyed this 1,000-foot overview about how the final expense telesales business works. If you would like more information, again, on joining the Dig Agency, you like final expense telesales as it's described here, go to my website, daviddeford.com, to learn more about how things work with the Dig Agency. We will see you next time. I'll be doing more of these live trainings on different topics very soon. And boy, I appreciate you being here. Y'all take care. See you.